Good evening. My name is Peter Ost, and I am proud and honored to serve as the President and Chief Executive Officer of the Adirondack Regional Chamber of Commerce. And on behalf of the Chamber, we welcome all of you tonight to tonight's Candidates Forum. These things don't happen without the support of our business community, and I want to express our appreciation to Time Warner Cable, who is our sponsor for tonight's event, and not only for tonight's event, but they're a strong supporter of having discourse within our governmental and community, our elected officials, to ensure that the open dialogue continues to happen. So again, we want to thank Time Warner Cable for their support of this forum tonight. Now, my mom always told me that in kindergarten you learn most of the things that you need to know in life, and I've kind of subscribed to that. So we're going to have some fun here, and we're also going to learn how to play in the sandbox really nice. So that's...
You don't think we know that?
And so there's a few little ground rules that we always have to adhere to as sandbox players, and one of those is that we do have a format that we want to ascribe to, and we will be holding to that relatively strictly. So I just want to make you aware of that. Also, for anyone in the audience, please, we are asking that, again, this is an open dialogue and a forum, that we don't have any signage for any of the candidates shown here in the auditorium. So we appreciate your support and your adherence to that rule. The other rule that we are going to adhere to is the fact that we're not going to allow you to address each other with a question. So these are questions that will be asked of all of you. You'll have an opportunity to address them and answer them. And we have an opening statement and then a closing statement. The opening statements will be 3 minutes each. And to ensure that this was a fair draw, we drew numbers just prior to this, and so Elise will be the first, followed by Matt, and followed by Aaron. So those will be the way that the opening statements and closing statements will occur. We will alternate the questions. The candidates will have 2 minutes each to answer those questions. We have some predetermined questions that have been developed, and so those will be asked at first. And then we invite you to participate in this forum as well, because we've handed out some 3x5 cards and some pencils, and we invite you to write down a question that you may have of the congressional candidates, and we'll make sure that we try to get through all of them, if possible, in our 1-hour time allotment. So that said, we'll get started. We're going to have opening statements. So if we could start with Elise Stefanov.
Thank you so much, Peter. It is a real privilege to be here today, and I want to first thank you for your leadership at the Adirondack Regional Chamber of Commerce. We met over a year ago, as I know you make yourself available to all types of candidates, and I'm really appreciative that you do that as a voice for small businesses throughout the greater Adirondack region. For those of you here tonight, my name is Elise Stefanov. I'm proud to say that I was born and raised in upstate New York, and I grew up in a small business family. When I was a kid, my parents started our family small business called Premium Plywood Products, and we're proud to do business with hundreds of customers throughout the North Country and over 1,000 small business customers in upstate New York. I was the first member of my immediate family to have the opportunity to graduate from college, and after graduating from college, I worked for 6 years in Washington on common sense public policy. I believe that Washington is broken, and we need a new generation of leadership who brings new ideas to the table and a willingness to work with anyone on a bipartisan basis to get things done. As I've traveled around the district for the past 15 months, I've prioritized reaching out not only to local chambers, but local small businesses. The #1 priority I hear from virtually every voter I speak with is we need to focus on creating jobs and building economic opportunity for our people right here in the North Country. How do we do that? We do that by pursuing fundamental tax reform for a flatter, fairer, simpler tax code. We need to reduce the regulations that are strangling our small businesses. And we need to have common sense healthcare reform that lowers costs, increases quality and accessibility, especially in our rural communities. I've also spoken at length about my commitment to standing up for our constitutional liberties, especially our Second Amendment rights. My campaign has also prioritized reaching out to farmers within the district. Agriculture is the backbone of our community in the North Country, and we deserve an advocate in Congress to fight on behalf of our farmers. And lastly, but very importantly, we need to stand up for our brave servicemen and women and our veterans in the district. My campaign has been committed to all of these groups and all of these issues since day one, and I'm really excited to be here today. And I want to thank everyone in the audience. I know people are here supporting different candidates, and some people are here today who haven't quite made a decision. But what differentiates you is that you're civically engaged. We need more people civically engaged, so it's a real privilege to be here today with my fellow candidates, but with all of you today.
Thank you, Elise. Matt.
Thank you, Peter. Thank you, Elise. I was born in Wilton, New York, which many of you who are in the audience right now who are actually from the district know is about 6 miles south of us here. I was born on a homestead farm or a subsistence farm. My father was a reporter. As the years progressed and my mother and he divorced, he married the wonderful woman who's sitting in the audience with him right now. I'm proud to call my stepmother. And together, we all lived kind of a little house on the prairie existence. It's a very small farm, but we raised almost all of our own food there. It was very idyllic, and it was also really hard work. And I only realized as I became a parent and not a farmer that the work was mostly being done by my father and by my stepmother. But it gave me a real appreciation for real food. And I almost would like to say that at the heart of this congressional race, at the heart of almost any issue we could bring to the fore in 2014 in the United States of America, food is at the forefront of it in my mind. I say that because we all eat food. It's something that brings us all together. And I can talk about the work I have done in this community. Many of you know that I have coached hockey and baseball. Many of you know that I have donated bread to hundreds, maybe perhaps more than that, charities in the area, soup kitchens and pantries. Many of you know that I am quite active with the local arts boards, Art in the Public Eye and Lake George Arts Project. There are some of you in the audience who are from the Glens Falls Food Co-op Board as well. I have been, according to people in the community, very supportive of what it is they're doing. And I thank them for saying that to me, because as a business person, that's what you've been to my business and my business family. 26 years ago, my stepbrother Joshua and I embarked on a journey to set up a business together at 21 and 22 years old. We had no money, from a very working class family, having no idea what it was truly going to be like, but having both had the experience of going to university, paying for it, and being, to be mild about it, unsatisfied with the experience. We decided we needed to work for ourselves. Even though we had beaten each other up with fists and baseball bats throughout much of our childhood, we did love each other and still do. And we knew that we could get along together long enough to actually do this. And 26 years later, that business still exists and has survived, which is a testament to the 35 people who work with me and for me. I'm a worker. I'm from the district. I believe that food is the key, farming is the key in this district to us turning things around. It's where the job base exists. It's where we can elevate workers from. It's where we can make the country healthier again. And I look forward to the rest of the conversation we're about to have.
Thank you, Matt. Aaron, your opening statement.
Thank you, Peter, very much. Thank you so much to the Chamber of Commerce, and thank you so much to the audience for being here. It's an incredible honor. It's an incredible honor to be running, auditioning, as I've said many times, for one of the least popular jobs in America right now. My name is Aaron Wolf. For those of you that don't know me, I've had a home in Elizabethtown, New York since 1968. Over the years, I have served on community and conservation boards. I've helped to sell and distribute the products of local farmers. I've driven up and down the Northway more times than I can count with a station wagon full of maple syrup and cheese to sell. I'm particularly proud of the fact that I have worked with Republicans and Democrats alike to help save 10 small-town movie theaters. I was one of the founders of the Go Digital or Go Dark campaign, which raised money and then leveraged local donations to get low-interest loans and state grants to help save our movie theaters, which was critical because when you save a movie theater, you're saving a Main Street anchor. And Glens Falls is one of the great examples in our district right now of the importance of Main Street and the importance of the businesses and the community that creates. You need that anchor because then you can create other jobs from restaurants. You create a critical mass of community. It's one of the projects that I'm most proud of in my entire life. And I think it's a project that had particular resonance with Congressman Bill Owens. Bill has vigorously endorsed my campaign. We've been out in the district many times. We've been looking at job growth and looking at ways of creating jobs together. And I think he liked that project for two reasons. One, it was bipartisan in its very spirit. And two, it was really about the ways that creating some jobs can lead to the creation of others. I'm very proud to be endorsed by the Small Business Council of America. And I'm really amazed and impressed with all the promise I'm seeing in local economies in the 21st District, whether it's in food systems, the revival of small-scale agriculture, value-added products for farmers, the repurposing of our heritage trades in forestry to produce cutting-edge biofuels. I'm very excited about the new contract with the re-energy plant at Fort Drum. But I think one of the most fulfilling things I've seen in the whole campaign process is just what Elise referred to, an audience full of people that despite all the dysfunction in Washington, despite all the money in politics, despite all the bad-mouthing that goes on in today's politics, that you're here for the same reason that the three of us are here. You still believe, and you believe that even if the system is broken, that there's a mechanism for fixing it. So thank you so much to all of you. Thank you to my fellow candidates, and I really look forward to tonight's discussion.
Right. Thank you, Aaron. Let's start with our first question, and a lot of you already know what that is, but it's about the Affordable Care Act, and it has become commonly known as Obamacare, good or bad. It's had a significant impact on, mostly negative impact, on the small business sector, primarily the sole proprietors in our community here in the 21st Congressional District. Many of these small businesses have been faced with increased deductibles and decreased coverage options, in addition to higher premiums for their health insurance. And there are many small business owners who are ceasing their coverage of health insurance. So as a freshman member of the United States Congress, what are your thoughts on how to provide truly affordable health insurance to this important sector of our regional economy? And I'll start with Elise because she was the first to draw the number. Elise?
Sure. So it's a top issue this election cycle, Peter, and this is an issue that I've discussed about given my family's small business experience after the implementation of Obamacare. In 2013, our health care coverage was canceled. We have 16 employees. 2014, we were given a 30% premium increase, higher deductibles, and higher out-of-pocket copays. And heading into 2015, it's an additional 15% increase. So I've spoken a lot about this issue, and it's not only my family's small business that has had this experience, it's many small businesses and individuals around the country and in the 21st Congressional District that are facing the challenges and cancellations and price hikes stemming from Obamacare. I support the repeal of Obamacare, but in the meantime, I support immediate fixes on a bipartisan basis that have a particular impact on the greater Warren County region. So two immediate ways to address some of the challenges from Obamacare are repealing the medical device tax, which is very critical for Catheter Valley. I visited C.R. Bard as an example of a medical device manufacturer locally. It's killing jobs and it's not allowing our manufacturing basis to grow. Another way that we can immediately address some of the negative impacts of Obamacare is by getting rid of the employer mandate, which incentivizes businesses not to hire above the 50 employee number, and it's causing hours to be cut, it's causing layoffs. I do support a bipartisan comprehensive health care bill. I think it needs to be passed across party lines, unlike Obamacare, which was a one-party vote. And my proposal for healthcare reform has 3 goals. How do you lower costs? How do you improve quality and increase accessibility, especially in rural communities that are struggling under Obamacare? Ways we can do that are by allowing healthcare insurance to be purchased across state lines, having a conversation about tort reform. As I meet with physicians around the district and rural hospitals, medical malpractice costs are increasing exponentially, and we need to make sure that we address tort reform. Giving individuals the same tax incentives that small businesses have to write off their healthcare costs, and then also making sure that healthcare is available for those with preconditions by having high-risk state insurance pools. I'm committed to common sense healthcare reform, but it must be done on a bipartisan basis.
Thank you, Elise. Matt.
Okay, the ACA is a tough one because quite frequently, as a Green, there's a common sense answer, and the Democratic Party may be in alignment with what the Green Party would like, but it won't advocate for it because it says it's not pragmatic. Here's some pragmatism for you. The wool handler study from Harvard from 2004, it was an update to a study that was done in the early 90s, showed that this is the dollar we spend on healthcare in the United States. How much of this dollar is already taxpayer money? 60 cents of it. Guess how much healthcare costs in every other industrialized nation in the world for every single human being who lives inside that country? Less than the 60 cents. So we're already paying 60 cents on the dollar as taxpayers for medical care that would be the best we could possibly have. By World Health Organization rankings, we're 38th of industrialized nations. Canada's system costs 52 cents to our dollar, and they live 3 years longer than we do. Their infant mortality rate is half of ours. Their obesity rate is a quarter. I like the people who say that there are all kinds of other reasons for that, and I say, well, let's find out what they are. Wouldn't that be useful to us if we were trying not to get fleeced? Why are the Democrats against single-payer health care? Why did they pass mandatory private insurance for everybody? The answer is simple. Hillary Clinton, after the Bill Clinton era, ran for office up here as a senator from outside the district based on hundreds of millions of dollars she collected, literally, over a 10-year period from big health insurance companies. That was her primary backer. And all I can say is we'll never get it passed if you keep electing Democrats. You're right, it isn't pragmatic. Let's elect a Green, because I'll talk about it in public. Democrats can't do it. Republicans would just like workers to die. They don't care if we have health care or not.
Aaron?
There was a great skit on the Jimmy Kimmel show where he was going up to people on the street and saying, are you in favor of the Affordable Care Act? And people would say, oh yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And then he would say, well, what about Obamacare? Oh no, I'm against that. I don't want that. It's clear that linking this piece of policy with the president's name, although I think the president himself has done that as well, is part of the issue here. We have a president with a very low popularity rating. We have a Republican Party that decided long ago to try to make this entire 2014 cycle a referendum on this particular policy. We don't call Medicare Johnson-a-care. We don't call Social Security Roosevelt-a-curity. And we should call the Affordable Care Act what it is, an attempt to make health care more affordable. A healthy workforce is good for business. It's good for small businesses and big businesses alike. People not using the emergency room for primary care is good for all of us that end up paying that bill. Look, I completely agree with Elise that there are issues with this bill that need to be addressed, and the medical device tax is first and foremost. This is an example, particularly in this county, but this is a resonant issue across the country. Medical devices happen to be something we do very well in this country, and I believe putting an unfair excise tax on them is punishing success. But we also need to close the donut hole for businesses between 25 and 50 people that want to offer health care to their employees. They should get the same tax breaks that smaller businesses do. This is a matter of great concern to small businesses in this district because we need to have people insured. We've got 23% more insured persons in the New York 21st now thanks to the Affordable Care Act. We've got 38,000 children with pre-existing conditions that can't be denied coverage. We can't go back to this idea of these Republican high-risk pools. The Republicans voted them in, and then they didn't fund them. And they had the same old problem with lifetime caps and high deductibles.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Aaron. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Before we progress to our next question, and that will start with Matt as we rotate through here, I'm going to ask the audience that they refrain from their applause during the course of this. We all have our opinions on things. We could all be applauding all of these fine people here tonight, and I would ask that we all save our applause until the end of the closing for their closing statements. Thank you very much.
We'd ask you to keep the same time schedule with all three candidates.
We are sticking to the time schedule as is being led. So, well, we will be sticking to the time schedule, and you're all aware of that. Matt, your question to get started of course, it's for everyone, but we'll start with you. It has been clearly stated that the small business sector is the backbone of our national and local economy, and this cohort will be the single most important factor in turning our still struggling regional economy around. The majority of business in our district are small businesses with less than 10 employees, with many being family-owned businesses that are the economic strength of their local communities. Aside from the Affordable Care Act, which we have just spoken about, what is the one issue that you will champion in the U.S. Congress, if elected, to help these local businesses succeed, grow, and thrive?
Well, that's an easy answer, and that's a $15 living wage. That seems counterintuitive at first, unless you realize that I'm actually the only business owner sitting on this stage. I'm the only one who actively works inside my business and built the business myself. Aaron, and I'm not disparaging him at all, has businesses, but he has said he's a minority owner. He's really more an investor in those businesses. Elise's family owns a business that I believe they did build from the ground up, and she's had experience inside it. I've built a business from the ground up with partners and friends. I still work in that business every day for a quarter century. Can we pay people $15 an hour in this country? It's a big question, and usually the answer from the business community is we can't afford to do that. We can't afford to pay sustainable living wages to workers. You know, you guys are workers. You didn't do so well in school. Your parents might have had substance abuse issues, or you might have been abused. You might just have been poor. You know, we know it's not through any fault of your own. It's not that you're lazy or stupid or anything like that. Yes, it is. But that's why you work at McDonald's. So you should work for $8 an hour. Now, I'm going to say again without being mean, the Democratic answer is let's pay you $10.10 an hour, get you off any subsidized benefits that might exist. 10 years ago, we all would have recognized this as a Republican ploy to destroy the working class entirely. Now we don't. We think that's incrementalism. It's not incrementalism. It's cruel and anti-worker. It really is. No Medicaid, no subsidized food in the form of food stamps, and no subsidized rent. How does it benefit small business? The words wage-led growth need to permeate Congress and our country. Henry Ford said, if you pay workers enough money to buy the product they're making, they'll buy it. Where's the common sense in this country? Have we lost it entirely? Have the multinationals destroyed our way of thinking so that we can't do simple math? If you pay people $8 an hour, they can't afford the terrible subsidized Big Mac they make.
Thank you very much, Matt. Aaron. Folks, if we could please try to adhere to the applause. Thank you. Aaron.
Thank you very much. I would like to point out that making documentary films, which has been my primary trade for the last 20 years, is certainly a business. It's one of the more challenging businesses in the country right now. You have to deliver a product on time and on budget, and a broadcast date is almost as immutable as an election day.
Might I also say that some of them are even good films?
Thank you, Matt. And you certainly have to pay much more than $15 an hour to get quality work in that field. But I would like to address the issue of the minimum wage because I disagree with Matt. I do think that $10.10 is an incremental but important goal. I think it's also an achievable goal. And in politics, achievement sometimes matters more than a pie-in-the-sky ideal. And I think that what we need to do is remember that so many people have gotten on board this particular issue. If it's not the CEOs of big food companies, it's also small businesses. As I said in the last debate, 67% of the small businesses in the Northeast region are in favor of a $10.10 minimum wage, 61% nationally. I think it's really important to remember that in an economy that's driven by 70% consumer spending, having more cash in people's pockets is good for business. And 1010 is a step that we can get to now and we must get to now. There's broad bipartisan support for doing this. I will hope everyone on this stage could at least commit to that. But another thing in this region is our infrastructure. We have failing water and sewer. We have bridges and roads that are falling apart. We need to figure out how to rebuild our infrastructure. I'm the only candidate on this stage that has talked about raising the revenue to do that. I've proposed a package of revenue raising that gets us over $130 billion a year. I think we need to spend 75 of that on building our infrastructure and 40 of that on tax breaks for small business.
Thank you, Aaron. Elise.
As I travel and talk to small business owners and employees at small businesses, one of the aspects that is costing our small businesses and isn't allowing U.S. businesses to compete globally is our tax code. Our tax code is over 75,000 pages long. Typically when I ask an audience, does anyone fill out their own taxes or does a business owner do their own taxes? Usually there's one hand that goes up, but not many. It's an example of Washington gone wild. It's long, it's riddled with loopholes, it no longer makes sense, and it's a cost of doing business, which is why I've made cutting taxes and fundamental tax reform a key part of my campaign, which will help small businesses grow. It helps small businesses have the funds to hire additional people and expand and invest in growing, and it also helps hardworking families save more of their hard-earned money to invest in future generations. A part of that is also regulatory reform. The cost of doing business has increased, and it continues to increase under this administration and in New York State. Again, one of the top issues during my local business tour with Miller Mechanical is the regulations that the owner has to deal with have just grown over the past 10 years. That's a cost of doing business. Instead of focusing on sales or hiring additional people, you're having people who have to cut through this red tape. So I think fundamental regulatory reform is another key way to help our small businesses grow and hire those additional people.
Thank you very much, Elise. Thank you very much. Now, I'm sorry, we're going to continue on. We have a third question. We'll start with Aaron on this one, as has been determined. The agricultural sector is a critical component of the economy and quality of life throughout the 21st Congressional District. It is impacted by many federal regulations that have in many cases been impediments to growth and job creation. Please share with us 3 specific ideas, bills or initiatives that you will introduce to ensure the long-term sustainability of the district's agricultural sector. Aaron?
That's a very good question, and I'm really glad you asked it. Clearly, agriculture is an important, probably the most important economic driver of our district, up there with Fort Drum in terms of our income. I think it's really important that we address some of the regulations. Certainly in agriculture, looking at EPA regs that have characterized puddles and ditches as navigable waterways, I think is an example of EPA regs going too far. But I also think that, sometimes we actually do address one of those regulations, such as Congressman Owens did with getting apples to be inspected in the country before they leave the country, and then that reform ends. And I would love to be able to address that. One of the most important things that I've talked about, though, on the stump is farm to school. We have a revival of small-scale agriculture, diversified agriculture in this in this district. It's providing real dollars and creating food hubs in the Champlain Valley and the St. Lawrence Valley. And when we pass Farm to School, we are giving farmers a steady market for their wares, something that they want. Farmers need more than anything a predictable market. We're getting healthy foods into our schools for our children. We know that not only health outcomes, but educational outcomes are improved by healthy foods. And we're also keeping the dollars in our community, which I think is really important for our main streets. So food hubs, regulation reform, and Farm to School are three of the most important things we could do.
That's great. Thank you very much, Aaron. That's, I'll switch back over here to Elise.
I agree with some of Aaron's proposals. I too would address the regulatory issues facing our farmers. Our agriculture is a huge part of our economy in the 21st Congressional District. 2/3 of New York State's agricultural lands are actually in our district, so we need to make sure that we're protecting our farmers and providing an environment in which they can grow. So addressing the Clean Water Act, specifically the navigable waters, I agree with Aaron Wolf on that issue. Additionally, assessing some of the EPA regulations and how they've negatively affect farmers in this district. That's something that I've heard from farmers across the district. And then my third priority is encouraging our next generation of farmers. So if you look at the age of our farmers in this district, but around the country, the average age is above 55. So these farmers, they're aging, and we need to provide incentives to encourage the next generation of farmers. We have some good news throughout the 21st District as young people are taking on this job and starting organic farms or specialty crop farms. But I want to make sure that there's an incentive, whether it's a tax incentive, whether it's a grant incentive, to make sure that that happens.
Thank you, Elise. Matt?
First off, I'd like to say that some time ago we had a governor named George Pataki, who some people referred to as Elmer, not my father, but somebody like him. George Pataki said famously to the 8 of us who were paying attention, and I was only paying attention through my father because I was young, that it was okay. He was asked about the loss of farmers within the state of New York, which was happening at an alarming rate. And he said, oh, don't worry about it. You know, we are losing some farms, but it's just a natural process. What actually is happening is we're retaining farm land. Now, what he meant by that is really interesting. What he meant by that is it's okay to have huge monocrop subsidized dairy farming. It's okay that those are the efficient farms. And no, it's not. Dairy farming is one of the most destructive kinds of farming you can do, and it's what we specialize in upstate New York. No one wants to hear this, but this is true. If you had 50 head and you were milking them, and you also had a vegetable garden and a cornfield, and you were engaging in all kinds of other animal husbandry and growing, that would be one thing. That's not what we have. We have centralized dairy, which is corporate agribusiness. It is heavily subsidized, it's heavily franchised, and the people participating in it are in a debt spiral. And it's ruining the environment. The runoff from these farms is absolutely horrific, and we don't even drink the milk because of BGH and BST. You know, not to mention the inhumanity to these genetically mutated creatures we call Holsteins. Let's say, what could we do if we re-envision farming the way some Europeans and the Italians, of course, do their farming, which is small regional farming. They've kept an agricultural base that's real. It's family farming, it's organics, it's farming that produces healthy food. What I would do specifically is put a green jobs program into effect that supported the transition of some of these dairy farm employees into renewable and sustainable energy. I would look at ag subsidies being shifted from the farm bill that were for corporate farming into smaller organic farming. And I'd look at immigration reform and a living wage for the people on the farms.
Thank you very much, Matt. Thank you. We have time for one more before we start taking some questions from the audience. I'll continue with Matt because he's in the middle, and then we'll go from there. Commerce between the United States, specifically New York State, and Canada has been a focus of chambers of commerce and state and local economic development organizations over the past decade or more. The Quebec-New York Corridor Initiative and others have had initial successes in the 21st Congressional District. What specific ideas or strategies will you deploy to ensure that these vital programs and initiatives continue to benefit businesses in upstate New York? Matt?
Well, I think that one of the things we have to look at when we look at our relationship with other countries, Canada especially, it being one of our largest trading partners, is how is that trade actually being conducted? My libertarian friends and my conservative friends believe in free trade. The problem is it doesn't exist. What we have is highly regulated trade that is masquerading itself as free trade. That highly regulated trade has actually benefited many other countries far more than it has the United States, especially people in the working and middle class in the United States. I am all for us trading with other countries. I'm not an isolationist economically. But I'm also for us understanding the impact it had on our country when NAFTA and GATT were signed. Republican initiatives that Reagan and Bush could not push through because there was an opposition. And then when the Democrats caved and became no longer the lesser evil, which very clearly happened when they passed NAFTA and GATT, to me, they doomed us to a life of slowly, steadily becoming a third world country, because we're being forced to compete with labor forces in Mexico, in India, in China, in Vietnam, in Malaysia. We are looking at the Canadian-American border very specifically here because we're self-interested. That's a huge problem that Congress has right now, is every congressional rep is taking corporate money and saying, what kind of pork can I bring back to my own district to keep me in that seat? Because, hey, the bennies are pretty good in this job. Salary's not so bad either. And when I retire, I can become a corporate lobbyist and make millions of dollars. It's a system of organized theft and bribery. It has nothing to do with international trade at all. But they're the ones making the trade deals. Do you think any of them are making those trade deals with our best interests in mind? I don't. I don't believe it for a second. So I would say renegotiate our trade deals, end some of them, make sure when Canadian shingles enter the market, they do so with duties and tariffs that protect our own production of shingles. Let's be common sense about it.
Thank you, Matt. I'll go down to
Stop that applause.
Thank you. You know, one of the first phone calls I made when I committed to seeking this office as the Democratic nominee in this district was to the former Canadian ambassador, David Jacobson. And we had a very sober conversation about balancing the needs of security versus the needs of trade. This is a conversation that continued over and over again as Bill Owens and I toured the northern counties of this district, looked at the ways we could attract businesses, as he was able to do in so many ways by simply touting the lower power costs. You know, one of the things that I thought of when we were talking about infrastructure is the reminder that in this district, our producers are within a day's drive of 70 million people. Well, a certain portion of those 70 million people are on the other side of the Canadian border. So facilitating trade with programs like Beyond the Border is essential. Making sure that our inspectors have some kind of jurisdictional authority to inspect on the Canadian side so that we can stop the jam-ups at the border is really important. Using all 12 border crossings, using the Ogdensburg crossing, which has much less traffic than the Thousand Islands crossing or the crossings in Clinton County, is another example of how we might facilitate that. But I agree that we need to figure out how to do that without impinging on another part of our economy. I've heard constantly in the Thousand Islands region, about as far away from Queensbury as you can get in this district, that recreational users of the St. Lawrence River are harassed constantly and have a hard time just going about normal activities, fishing on the river. We need to figure out how to balance security and trade, and I think we haven't done both as well as we might.
Thank you, Aaron. Elise.
I believe our partnerships with Canadian businesses in this district is a success story, and much of that is due to Congressman Bill Owens' personal leadership on this issue, not only in the district before he had the opportunity to represent his constituents, but also in Washington. In one of my conversations with Congressman Owens related to his constituent services, I asked him about his role in the Northern Border Caucus, and it's a bipartisan organization in Washington to make sure that your fellow policymakers are aware that the largest trading partner with the United States is indeed Canada, and how important it is to our economies in those northern districts. So one key way I would like to focus on continuing to promote the relationship between Northern New York businesses and Canadian businesses is serving on that bipartisan Northern Border Caucus and hopefully stepping into Congressman Owens' shoes to do so. I also think that infrastructure is a huge part of this. I agree with Aaron's assessment of utilizing the Ogdensburg Bridge as one of the crossings, but we need to make sure that we have long-term infrastructure funding to make sure that our bridges and waterways, seaways, and roads are up to pace for the goods to be transported across the border. And again, this is something that personally my family's business has experience with. We're in the forest products industry. Some of our products are manufactured in Whitehall, New York, but we also work with Canadian businesses. So making sure that we have the support system for local small businesses and we continue to promote the partnerships with Canadian businesses, I think the key role is being a strong advocate for that in Washington.
Thank you very much, Elise. Well, that comes to the conclusion of our predetermined questions for all of you as candidates, and thank you very much for your responses and your candidness regarding all 4 of those issues. We now have a stack, and it looks like we've got a number of people who have questions. I'm not sure we're going to get through all of these this evening. We could be here till midnight, but I will start and try to get
Just
through
for the record, it's okay with me if we are.
We have a number of them. I'll start with the ones here at the top here, and this is a question that says, and I'll start with, I started with Matt, so I'll start with Aaron here, and then we'll go, everyone will have an opportunity to answer this question. Our business is located in a rural area, and we lack any sort of broadband access to help us become truly viable and help us grow. What do you plan to do to get us high-speed broadband so we can survive? Aaron?
Well, when President Roosevelt brought rural electrification to the remote areas, he did an incredible service to the American economy and an incredible service to the rural economy. I think we need to look at digital infrastructure with the same kind of vigor that President Roosevelt looked at rural electrification. It's a very big challenge. Some of the challenges, particularly in the Adirondack Park, have to do with overcoming a lot of both APA conditions and constitutional conditions in the state of New York. This is obviously a state issue, but I think one of the things that Bill Owens has done well, and I think one of the things that you should expect of your next congressperson, is that they become a kind of convener. Even when there is an issue like this that has both state and federal components, it's really important that your congressperson is able to bring together, has the kind of pulpit and the authority to bring together the right matches, the funding on the federal side and the people that can help get through some of the regulatory hurdles on the state side. But again, this is another infrastructure issue that involves spending. And we need to talk very much and with great sobriety about how we're going to raise money. Again, if we close loopholes that allow corporations to move profits overseas, the inversions, the offshoring, we can raise another $50 billion, $59 billion by some estimates. If we cap individual deductions at 28%, not including charitable deductions, we can bring another $40 billion in. If we pass the Buffett rule, one of the most reasonable proposals on the table right now, $7 to $9 additional billion. Even if you make that income level very high in the single millions of dollars, we can bring a lot more in. We need to invest in our future. We need to invest in our infrastructure, and we need to have a sober way of raising the money to do so. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Aaron. Elise?
Rural broadband is an issue that I think not only affects everyone, but it particularly affects young people. In the 21st century economy, we're living in a digital age, and in order to be able to compete in a global economy, it's important that we have access using technology. This is particularly an issue in the Adirondack region of this district, as Aaron pointed out. I have made investment in rural broadband a key part of the campaign. I've talked about it with the Adirondack Economic Review Board and with town supervisors in some of the local towns and villages throughout the district who don't have access to rural broadband. One key way that I think we can encourage rural broadband investment is having someone designated in the congressional office to apply for grants and to help local towns, local organizations, municipalities have an understanding of grants that are out there to access federal dollars for investment in rural broadband. There's also an opportunity to have public-private partnerships to making sure that we're building our technology infrastructure. And then more broadly, I'm a big believer in making sure that we can compete in the digital age, which is why one of my transparency issues over the course of the campaign is making sure that every vote that I take, if I earn the support of this district, is on the website and on Facebook, so constituents can have access and that their representative is transparent. I think that's broadly a part of making sure that we have a smart digital presence in this district, and we need to have rural broadband to make sure that that accessibility is there.
Thank you very much, Elise. Matt, broadband.
I would like to spend my 3 minutes talking about broadband, saying that Aaron and Elise have both basically summed up most of my opinion about rural broadband. But I'd also like to suggest something. We have a lot of questions from the audience, and I think that's the wonderful thing about this debate that we're being denied in the televised debates. The interaction, arguably on a more informal level between us, the information that can be passed, the energy that you have, the questions you specifically have as voters are far more important than what a moderator or several moderators may have to ask us. I don't like 1-minute answers, as you may have figured out. Those of you who know me know that this is an impossible format for me to constrain myself with. I would like to ask Peter and Elise and Aaron, if given the stack we have right here and our desire to answer your questions, can we limit our answers to a shorter period of time in the hopes that we can get through more of the questions? Is that agreeable to everybody else?
They are scheduled as 2-minute responses for all these questions, and each, so this is 6 minutes between all of you. It is your call if you want to limit that to any less than that.
I'll just say that I will volunteer to try to keep my answers shorter than the 2 or 3 minutes we're talking
Me
about.
too.
Let's try to do
possible.
that so we can get through more
And I'll give
questions.
you 25 words in a box top on rural broadband. I had dial-up when America Online existed, and I hated it, and it took a really long time, and we all remember the beep, boo, boo noise that the phone cord made. And I just have to say, I have a phone in my pocket right now with which I could talk to somebody for free in China. You know, that doesn't work in the middle of the Adirondack Park. Sometimes I say, thank God. You know, not when I'm lost and on my way to a campaign event, and then I say, where is the rural broadband? But I'm saying I understand people's frustration, but we choose to live in the middle of nowhere because there's something really beautiful about it. I don't like big fake green trees stuck in the middle of it that pretend that we are connected to civilization. The whole idea is we're trying to disconnect a little bit. So I think when you're in the middle of nowhere, maybe we should be looking at regional decision making for how we bring in rural broadband so it's not offensive to those living in the area.
Okay, thank you very much, Matt. So am I hearing
Peter,
that?
we had a party line when I was a kid in Elizabethtown, and 3 families shared the same phone line. And even though that's ancient technology, it was kind of wonderful that we had that kind of
You could
sense
listen
of
to what
community
Gladys
around.
down the road was doing.
So all in favor of going back to party lines? I hear from all 3 of you candidates that you would like to limit these to minute responses, which would help speed up and get through more
We'll
of
do
these
the best.
questions.
I
So-
think we're with you that let's stay with the 2-minute format, but we're all making a kind of voluntary agreement that we'll try to keep it
Try to
shorter
keep
so
it
we can
shorter.
get through that
Okay.
stack.
Thank you, Carrie, you understand. We have a question here. What federal tax reforms are you in favor of? Do you recommend any changes in corporate inversions? I think I started with Aaron, so Elise.
Sure. So one of the issues that I talked about in my opening statement is fundamental tax reform. I believe the tax code is broken. We should throw out the tax code and start from scratch. And in terms of the corporate tax rate, which is what you're referring to, is the United States has one of the highest corporate tax rates out of developed countries in the world, especially if you compare it to our northern border partner, Canada. Our corporate tax rate is much less competitive. So as part of comprehensive tax reform, I believe that we need to lower the corporate tax rate to a more competitive level at or about 25%. This has been supported by leaders and economists from both sides of the aisle, both Democrats and Republicans. And there may be a few Greens in there too who support that. You'll have to tell me, Matt. But that's where I stand on fundamental tax reform, is throw the tax code out, start from scratch, flatter, fairer tax system, and part of that should be cutting the corporate tax rate so that we can compete in today's global economy.
Thank you, Elise. Matt?
Very simply put, I'm not a typical Green on many, many levels, and this is one of them. I am all for total tax reform. But before I address that, let me say something. No one congressperson, Elise, myself, or Aaron, is ever going to totally reform the tax code. Ever. You need to stop voting D and R and expecting change. We haven't had change in 45 years. Okay? If you want total tax reform, as I'm going to suggest it to you right now, you need to vote Green, you need to vote Libertarian, you need to vote somebody who doesn't take corporate money. It's the only way it's ever going to happen. We have to start it right here. I say a 10% consumption tax. This is from my friend who's a professor of economics at Siena. 10% consumption tax, which many view as regressive. It wouldn't be regressive if you coupled it with a $15 living wage and already paid for single-payer health care at all. And no loopholes. When corporate America wants to build something, they pay 10% on the building materials. You want to buy a dress, you pay 10%. Bottom line is 1.3% wealth tax accompanies that. It brings in all the same revenue we receive right now. Important point of order, we currently are basically funding all of our social programs by borrowing money out of a private bank we like to call the Federal Reserve. So let's not worry about social programs being cut as a result of that. We have a $17 trillion debt. We're not running a budget right now.
Thank you very much, Matt. Aaron?
Well, when I hear the word flat tax, I say hold on to your wallet, because a flatter tax means more taxes for working people and less for wealthy people. We do have to reduce our corporate tax rate. We do have to make that competitive, but we have to account for the lost revenue. Something's not working with our corporate tax rate now. If of the 50 biggest corporations in this country, 25 of them pay no tax at all. And one of the reasons is we have so many loopholes, and one of them that we have to close right away is the corporate malfeasance loophole. This allows a company like, say, BP. BP was assessed an $11 billion fine for spilling all that oil in the Gulf. But because they were able to write that off, it effectively means that everybody in this room helped pay $5.5 billion of those taxes. So we are paying for BP's malfeasance, and that's something that's got to stop. I also think that we can do a lot with the tax code for small businesses. I'm the only person on this stage that has proposed concrete tax breaks for small businesses, including starting right away with a 20% tax break for every small business that adds payroll or adds new hires or expands the payroll they have right now. The Congressional Budget Office thinks this is one of the best things we can do in the short and immediate term to stimulate small business.
Thank you very much, Aaron. We have a number of questions here that are related to the 21st District, and this one here is the 21st Congressional District is the largest east of the Mississippi. We've known that for a while, and we know that there's a lot of travel involved. And so the question really is, how do you plan to keep in touch with the many communities throughout the district? And I'll start with Matt on this one.
Can you repeat the last sentence of that question?
It says, how do you plan to keep in touch with the many communities that are throughout the 21st Congressional District?
How do I personally intend to do that? I said this earlier in Hague at a forum that was during the Republican primary process. I've lived here pretty much all of my adult life. I've already kept in touch with all of you. So I already kind of have my finger on the pulse, and I've owned a cafe for 12 years in which I have gladly shot my mouth off about any variety of issues on a regular basis, to the great horror and pleasure of a number of people in our community. I didn't do that because I have a big mouth. I did that because I actually care about these issues, and I'm really interested in what other people have to say, because that's one of the ways you learn things, is to have discourse and to have an opinion, have somebody say, no, that's not true, because you don't know about this. As we have these discussions as adults, as we engage in free speech and discourse, we learn things. I've learned a lot. I've learned a lot in the 26 years of living in the Glens Falls area. I've learned a lot by being a resident here, that diplomatically, my friend Ralph Nader likes to refer to people who run from outside the district as tourists. I love Aaron and Elise, and I'm glad they're running. I won't call them tourists. I'll do it indirectly by saying Ralph said it. I already know what you think, and I'm not in agreement with the collective about everything. But going to a duck race or a parade and putting my face in at a chamber mixer or a committee meeting is not the right way to represent you in Congress. The right way to keep in touch is to figure out a way to have a referendum on issues that matter, probably an online one, and to basically allow for a week of voting. I'm not sure I have the capacity to do that yet, but I would certainly try to be the first congressman in history to do it, to actually ask my constituency every time there was a major vote, how do you want me to represent you?
Thank you very much, Matt. Aaron?
Well, Bill Owens did a kind of party line when he was as congressional representative, where he would hold telephone town halls, several of which I participated in. I thought that was a good start. But one of the things that I've heard on the campaign trail more than almost any other is when people come up to me, issues aside, they say, will you pick up the phone like Bill Owens did? And I think we all deserve, Bill Owens deserves an enormous amount of credit, even with his frustrations with a Republican-led House. It was very difficult to get anything done. But Bill was amazing with constituent services, and I think that's something that we all need to commit ourselves to very much. If you run for office in this district, you learn a thing or two about geography, and you learn a thing or two about how hard it is to reach out to so many communities. We have 4 offices on this campaign, and I'm still saying to staffers all the time, you have to be on the move, you have to get out. So I think until we have the digital infrastructure that allows us to communicate online across this whole district, and sadly we don't, we have to make sure that we have fixed offices, but we also have mobile offices to reach out to constituents. I think it's one of the most important parts of being a congressman is constituent services, and it would be incredible to do it as well as Bill Owens has done it.
Thank you very much, Aaron. And I will comment that our current congressman has been very, very strong at getting around the district. So we appreciate that from a business perspective. Elise.
Sure, so the idea that I proposed over a year ago is having a mobile district office. This was a fresh, new idea and hasn't been done before in the 21st district. It's been a hallmark of my campaign, and I'm appreciative that other candidates are now also supporting that idea. But this is an idea that I came to when talking to representatives of the district in the western part of the country who have full states in some cases. In a district like ours with 149 small towns and villages, we need to do more than just answer correspondence and pick up the phone. I'm committed to going into each and every one of the towns and villages with our mobile district office so that you can talk to someone face to face, whether it's a question on veterans issues, whether it's a question on how do I apply for this grant. And I think my campaign has demonstrated this over the past year. I've personally traveled over 100,000 miles in this district, going into each of the towns and villages and small businesses. Just to give you a sense of the past 2 or 3 months in the greater Warren County area in terms of our business visits, we've hit Adirondack Brewery, Gourmet Cafe, Davidson Brothers, Hal's Farm Stand, Glen Street Associates, Mark Levac Realty, Miller Mechanical, C.R. Bard, Barton Mines, Caldwell Bankers, Fountain Square Outfitters, the Charles Wood Theater, Garvey Auto, Glens Falls National Bank, and Arrow Financial. The reason why I'm listing those names is because no one's going to outwork me if I'm lucky enough to earn the support of the voters in this district, and no one's been able to outwork me on the campaign trail to date.
Thank you very much, Elise. This is a kind of a combination. I'm going to combine a couple of questions here that are somewhat related. It has to do with our oil and gas exploration. It says, do you think our government should subsidize renewable energies and remove subsidies for oil and fossil fuels? And what's your stand on hydrofracking?
Energy independence is a key issue nationally right now. I think not just our current president, but previous administrations have failed to put forth a policy of energy independence and energy security. I support an all-of-the-above energy approach. I don't think we should be having subsidies for one energy sector over the other. I think we need to encourage growth of all energy sectors. That includes renewables, that includes wind, solar, oil and gas, and it includes natural gas. I support fracking, and if you look particularly in other states across the border in central and western New York, in Pennsylvania, for example, the job growth that has resulted from the safe exploration of natural gas has really been an economic driver, as well as in North Dakota and in Ohio.
Thank you very much, Elise. Matt, I'll jump to you on this one.
I would just like to say that I'm not going to engage in anything other than a disgusted look for that one. I would ban fracking nationally, and it's easy to say that. It's another matter to actually advocate for it in a Congress full of people who are paid by the energy industry. I'll do that too. Neither of these candidates will do it. They're already running that way. They're supposed to be pandering and telling you all kinds of things you want to hear. We all want to ban fracking, except for about 10% of us invested in the energy companies. We all want renewable, sustainable energy that's safe. We all want to not poison our water tables. We all want to not poison the air around us. We all would also like to have jobs. Call us crazy. But isn't it possible to do all of that? Other countries seem to be figuring out how to do it. We can't do it because Congress is bought and sold by the same people who are running for office right now. And again, I'm just going to tell you, I don't take corporate money. You have an historic opportunity here. I'm probably not going to do this again. I promise you, I probably won't. And I'm sure there are Democrats happy to hear that, including Aaron. But the bottom line is, these are issues that matter to me. I've been politically active and involved in fighting them for decades. That's not going to stop, because I want clean air and water for my children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren, and yours too. And if you vote like all that matters today is whether a guy in Pennsylvania has a job working in fracking, then we're going to have fracking. So let's make sure we don't support it. And Keystone XL and the oil trains, same deal. I'm not into transitional energy. We already subsidize the oil companies. Let's immediately start a program of subsidizing photovoltaic manufacture and wind farms and hydropower.
Thank you, Matt. Folks, we can refrain from the applause. We'd very much appreciate that. Thank you. Aaron, your thoughts?
We've been subsidizing big oil since 1916. In 1916, that might have been a pretty good idea because petroleum was the fuel of the future. Well, let me tell you something. It ain't the fuel of the future right now. And we need to be supporting the transition to a renewable economy immediately. We need to continue the production tax credits for renewables. Some of my opponents have talked about an all of the above or an even playing field, but as long as we're subsidizing oil, there is no even playing field. As the congressional representative of the New York 21st District, my job is to protect the most important resource that we have underneath the ground, and that's our water. The New York 21st has one of the most important sources of fresh water in the entire Northeast. That is a resource that is going to have increasing and not decreasing economic value. My position on fracking is that I do think we need to have a transitional approach. I think an economic collapse by moving immediately to renewables without any infrastructure would be probably worse for climate change than having a transition. But I think the externalities of fracking make it a very undesirable choice. I do not believe that anybody should drill for anything without coming into compliance with the Clean Water Act, with the Safe Drinking Water Act. Currently, fracking companies are exempt from that. I think that local communities should be able to have all the information that they need, what kinds of poisons are being put into the ground and what their effect is. You know, we make policy all the time in Washington based only on the short-term gains. And we need to begin making policies on a full cost accounting, which means everything that costs, what is the number that the environmental damage entails, and then we can truly evaluate these choices.
Thank you very much, Aaron. We're approaching the time of our time together because we know that you have commitments that you have to go to. So but I found an interesting question in here, and I think we're going to limit this to 1 minute before you all have your closing statements. I found it's interesting. It will open up. We committed to ensuring that this discussion was about business and economic development issues and in job creation. But this is something that will open up a little bit about your own personal self. So for 1 minute. And I'll start with Aaron because you were the next. And it is, who do you love more than anyone in the world and why? So,
oh,
Aaron?
my goodness. Wow. Well, my mom is in the audience tonight, so. But I think my mother would approve of my saying that I love the women in my family. My marvelous wife, who is a psychologist who specializes in children and adolescents exposed to violence and trauma. One of the most important things we need in our rural economy and our rural healthcare plan is access to rural mental health. And I'm going to get sentimental, but my 3-year-old daughter, Eloise, is one of the most important reasons why I'm running for Congress. She just began preschool in Essex County this month. And I want her to be able to have a future. And I know that the rural economy is a challenge not just for the New York 21st, but globally. We're seeing increasing urbanization. We need to address these issues. In my closing statement, I'm going to talk a little bit more about that. But seeing my daughter go off to school, seeing all the challenges she faces just in terms of separating from us in preschool, are daunting, but I want her to have the least amount of challenges when it comes to finding a job here, getting a top quality education here, and being able to stay here in the New York 21st as long as she wishes. Thank you very much, Aaron.
Thank you. Elise.
I think most of our answers are probably going to be similar. The people I love most are my parents and my brother. I truly feel blessed to have been born to both of my parents who raised me with courage of conviction. They raised me with a very strong work ethic. And they also raised me with, the encouragement to be creative and challenge yourself. So I really credit a lot of who I am today and pretty much all of who I am today with the values my parents instilled in me and the opportunities they gave me, and my brother too. I can't forget my brother Matty.
Thank you very much.
His name is Matty.
Only I call him that.
That's what my brother calls me. One of them. One of the ones who didn't beat me up.
All right, Matty, it's your turn.
Thank you, Petey. This is a tough one for me because there are a huge number of people in this audience right now who actually would be exactly that person that I love the most in the world. And I could list them, that would be a way to deal with it, but there's too many of them and I don't have enough time. So I will say that, there are so many people who are very dear to me that I'm not going to list them. Most of them are family. But what I've learned living in this community for 26 years is that family's a big word. And I consider all of you here tonight participating in this family. The whole motivation for me running for Congress is because I love everyone, even people I don't like. No, seriously, I do. I love people and I love us. I'm a fan of human beings, but we can do a better job. And I would love us all a lot more if we could all work together better. Congress is a good example of how we don't do it. I want to change that. That's why I'm running.
Thank you very much, Matt. We now come to the conclusion of our forum here tonight, and I want to thank all of you for your time and your commitment and to your candidness with all of us here tonight. We have a closing statement from each one of you. There'll be 1.5 minutes each, and it was determined by the initial draw, so we'll start with Elise. Elise?
Sure. I want to thank everyone again for the opportunity to be here, and I want to thank my fellow candidates. I think this is an example of the type of discourse Washington is sorely lacking, a willingness to put forth your own solutions and have a dialogue. So I hope our next representative brings that sentiment to Washington. I also want to thank you again, Peter, and thank the local Chamber of Commerce for hosting this event. The reasons I got in this race haven't changed. My opponents have changed quite a bit over this past year, but it's the fundamental belief that we desperately need new ideas and a new generation of common sense leadership. People who are willing to roll up their sleeves and work with anyone, regardless of what party they're from, to solve the issues that we're facing in this country today. Chief among those issues are economic development and job creation. As you've heard discussed this evening, I support fundamental tax reform so that hardworking families and small businesses can save more of their hard-earned dollars and invest in their communities. I support our agriculture economy in the district. We need an advocate on the Ag Committee, and that's something that I've discussed with farmers throughout the district. And an issue that didn't come up today but is very important is standing up for our veterans and servicemen and women and ensuring that we have a strong defense policy in terms of not balancing the budget on the backs of our servicemen and women, which affects the Fort Drum region of this district. I'm excited to be here. I'm excited to be the candidate endorsed by the U.S. Chamber and the National Federation of Independent Businesses. And thank you so much. Thanks to my supporters for being so polite today.
Thank you very much, Elise. Matt.
I'm not going to say again that I'm the only one native to District 21 who's sitting here, but I am. I'm also going to say that I'm a business owner and I'm a worker. I'm also a hockey coach and a baseball coach, a bad one, according to most of the kids who've been coached by me, but I am those things. If you elect me to office, which you're going to do, I know that you are. I'm actually amazed that it's going to happen, but as Elise just said, we need a new generation and new leadership. We don't. We need representation, and we need new ideas. The new ideas are actually old ideas that come from workers, those same workers who organized unions 100 years ago, not from people who are wealthy and not from people who are being sponsored by wealthy people. Congress is made up of millionaires, every single one of them. That's class warfare. 96% of us are not millionaires, and 100% of Congress is. You do the math. Are they ever going to be able to represent you? No, of course not. Millionaire represented by billionaires. Worker. It's real simple, and the people in the district getting that right now are going to be primarily Republicans as it goes out on TV. The Democrats are already supporting me. 42% of us already don't buy into this nonsense. Who's going to get elected? Matt Funicello. And I'm going to be elected with all of you as my voice because I'm not your leader. I'm going to be your representative. And I'm going to say again, a new conversation needs to take place in Congress. It's never going to happen if you don't vote for your great-grandkids. Be brave. Vote green.
Thank you very much, Matt.
I love you too.
Aaron, your closing statement.
Thank you. I wish it were so simple. I wish it were so simple to say that rich people are bad, working people are good. Both of these candidates have made an issue of the fact that I married a wealthy woman, and I think back on some of the most thoughtful and most progressive leaders this country has ever had, Franklin Roosevelt among them, who came from a wealthy world and did some of the most thoughtful things for working people in our history. I don't think that the world is as simple as either of these messages want it to be. Elise Stefanik talks about less regulation and less taxes. But when I think of a regulation like the Americans with Disabilities Act that allows disabled people to work and start businesses and have the rights of access of all of us, that's a regulation I can get behind. When I think about a regulation like stopping the oil trains, that's a regulation I can get behind. I'm running for Congress because of my daughter Eloise and because of all the possibilities I've seen in biomass, in biomedical technologies in Saranac Lake, in innovation hubs across this district. But I'm also running because the 2010 census revealed what many of us knew and feared, is that we were losing young people. We have so many assets in this district. When I think of what's happened in Glens Falls, the fastest growing real estate prices in America are walkable communities. We've got hundreds of those in this district. We have clean water, we have recreation, we have the best and most hardworking people in the world. That 2010 census is going to reveal that we stopped the flow, that we learned to develop our industries, and we rescued our main streets, starting with the movie theaters. So thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Let's please give all of these candidates a fine round of applause for their participation tonight. Thank you very much. Thank you, Peter.
Does anybody have any tape so I can put my 60 cents on the dollar back together and reform healthcare?
Thank you all for coming, and we hope to see you all at the polls on November 4th.